Trust me, I do work here. I've been watching videos from this sub for a while and I thought it's about time I post. I guess I should start with my first experience from my first ever real job. Paper delivery doesn't count. So this was back in 1984 or 85. I went to one of those high schools you had to pass a test to get into, Bronx Science for those who know. The school had way too much money and alumni with connections, that getting a job at more interesting venues was not only easy but encouraged. I chose the Bronx Zoo. The pay wasn't great, $3.45 an hour, and I was 15, so I'm not really looking to stand out and advance my career as a zoologist. To keep things interesting, I took various jobs around the zoo that required little skill, ranging from ticket sales to watching and renting strollers to visitors. On this particular day, I was selling tickets, security, or guides for the front gate when a group of similar-aged boys wandered over, asking to walk into the zoo for free. To make the philanthropists who support the zoo feel better, they had a couple days each week that entry to the zoo was free. But this was not one of those days. I informed the guys of this and asked them to return the next day. After a bit of arguing, they strolled back down the road and made a right turn out of the gate. Even then, I had already acquired the main skill that would serve me well later in life, which was reading people, so I already knew what the boys were thinking. I asked my partner at the gate to cover, and that I was going to save the lives of the guys who were just here. I walked down the road, made the same right, and continued down the fence that surrounded the zoo. Just as I predicted, about 1,000 feet down, I came upon the same group climbing that fence. Two of them jumped down and ran, but the third got his pants stuck in the razor wire on this section of fencing. I walked up as smug as I could and asked him if he knew why there was razor wire on the fence. To keep people from sneaking in? He meekly replied. Actually, no, it's because at the bottom of the fence, the ground slopes really sharply and empties into the hippopotamus tank. Do you know what the most dangerous animal in the zoo is? That's right, the hippopotamus. I watched as he ripped his pants, jumped down and scurried off after his friends. Well, that's 3 lives saved at my very first job and not the last of my career. The next one is Tribe of Karens. So, I'm a truck driver and I deliver to a series of stores where once upon a time things actually used to cost $1. All the times before rapid inflation, they were nice. Anyways, this job sucks, but it pays very well. The downside is that I actually have to unload the truck by picking up every box and throwing it down a series of roller trays where it's caught by a roller rack that belongs to the store. I hook my roller trays onto the roller rack and do this process 4 to 5 times in a delivery day. This can be a painless procedure or it can be very painful. I never know what kind of delivery it's going to be until I get there and get started. Sometimes a bad parking angle can send the boxes flying everywhere. Sometimes the staff makes a lot of things more difficult than it needs to be. This one particular delivery was the latter. I get there and I can't figure out what set of doors or potentially dock I need to back up to. There's a couple of doors with a raised concrete walkway that looks like I could back up to it. But then there's a couple of docks next to it and some stores actually have docks. I call the store and the day manager Karen answers and says, "Pull up to the dock." And then she immediately hangs up. I needed to clarify, does she mean dock or is she referring to the concrete walkway with a gap in it as a dock? I'm making an assumption and I go with it, and it turns out I'm right, they don't actually have a dock. Already off to a great start. I get the doors open, I walk inside and immediately Karen 2 stirs at me and in a commanding voice yells out, "Excuse me, can I help you?" Exactly the way you would to some random trespasser that had walked in your back room. I look around and see that every employee in there is an angry, bitter-looking old woman. And I, as the younger man, have earned their hatred simply for existing. I just kind of stare for a moment and say, "I'm here to get set up so we can get started," while pointing at the rollers. What I didn't know is that right next to the rollers was a ramp for making a connection to take a pallet jack into the truck. Karen 2 starts laying into me. "We don't need the ramp. We're not unloading pallets. We don't need the ramp." It takes me a moment to figure out what she's even talking about, which she takes as me not knowing how to do my job. and continues on to tell me what it is I'm supposed to be doing. And then I realize she doesn't actually think that I'm clueless, she just wants power over me. It's not about doing things right, it's about being in charge. Immediately, the great philosopher Booty Warrior comes into my mind. Okay, bitch. We can do things the easy way or we can do things the hard way. Now I can see that you're choosing the hard way. Now there are certain positions I can put my rollers and that can make things easy and positions that make things hard. A steep decline near the end with a long flat area behind that allows me to line up the boxes about 30 foot long. Just a series of boxes ready to go down that railgun and fire into that store like a freight train of This is what you get with the hard way. By the time the product is halfway down their set of rollers, it's moving so fast that it's bouncing off of the surface and onto the floor. I can move fast when I'm so inspired. I was building those freight trains and sending them one after another. I love the sound of rollers pushed to their limits. Typically, I'll send the product as nice as possible, but they earn this. I unloaded as fast as I could, pulled my roller tables back inside, and got the out of there. Good night, Karen. Now pick that stuff up. Your storage room looks like a mess. The next one is, I do work here, lady. Don't worry, I'm not pregnant. I work retail, pricing items on shelves. I'm 18 female, but look very young and generally exude a nervous, unsure, and very kiddish sort of energy. I wear a Christmas jumper, it's my dad, so it's a bit big on me, as an optional uniform choice. And in my opinion, most of the time I do the opposite of exuding I work here energy. I exude energy that makes people double take and go, do you work here? Even though I have a bulky portable scanner and printer slung over my shoulder and I'm printing out barcodes and stuff, which I can't imagine a customer would be doing. Today I was pricing the health section and I picked up a clear blue pregnancy test, and the lady who was humming along to All I Want for Christmas, blaring over the store speakers as she approached from behind me, came up to me and said, "Oh, if you're looking at those ones, they're not any good. Oh, you work here." She was shocked. She just giggled and said sorry and left. I was spluttering because I didn't really expect the social interaction, so my brain stalled. So I just ended up smiling back and saying, thank you for the information. Which, typing out, I now realize sounds kinda sarcastic. But there wasn't a bit of it in my voice, really. To be honest, I just thought it was really nice of her to come up to someone she thought was perhaps a tiny anxious teen holding a pregnancy test and not offer any judgment. But just a small piece of fair advice. Her smile was nice too. I just think she seemed nice. I did work there and I wasn't having a pregnancy scare, but thank you anyway. I will bank that information for if I ever need it. This next one is called, I'm not the repairman, am I? In my teens, I got a part-time job at a store. The store was a franchise of a national chain, something like Sears. I was the first male, and for a few years only employee at the store. All female wore long to the ankle tear dust jackets, and the men had a short above the knee dark blue one. I often get mistaken for a repairman or janitor. I walked around the store doing all kinds of tasks. Shelving, ordering, bakery, inventory, tills, but also repair and heavier, dirtier duties. One time I had to make a shelf at each cash register to lay bags on. I went into the register, crouched under the till and screw brackets and placed the shelf. No biggie. At one till, a colleague was cashing customers out and I was laying down between her legs with my upper body in between the footboard and the register itself. As I was done, I tapped on her foot so she could move a little backwards and I could get up. Imagine being a customer and you see a teen boy rising from between the legs of a sitting teen girl, wearing a long dust jacket with his face towards her. The sound of the little cordless screwdriver a few minutes earlier could be confused for something else too. I do work here, lady. Happy face. The next story is Angry Kevin gets himself banned from gas station. So, obligatory, this is not my story, it's my mom's. Sorry if the details are a little vague, I'm telling this secondhand. Also, I'm on mobile. Okay, so my mom works at a petrol station in a small town. Recently, she got a promotion to the position of shift manager. Now, while most of the customers are the locals who tend to be friendly, the store does get some jerks in. Anyway, this guy Kevin comes in driving a large van and pays £10 for petrol. Now, due to the rise in fuel costs and the size of his vehicle, the fuel didn't immediately register on his fuel gauge due to not flowing through his engine. Or at least I believe that's what happened. I'm not car savvy. So after paying and driving a few meters off a little, Kevin storms back in angrily and goes up to my mother behind the counter, bypassing several customers in the queue. "Your pump didn't work! I didn't get any fuel!" Kevin said. My mother asks him which pump he used so she can check again how much he paid. "Okay, so you only paid £10. Given the size of your vehicle, it's likely it hasn't gone through your engine completely to raise the fuel gauge." "No, I've had this van for several years, and £10 was always enough to raise it. Your pump must be broken." "Unfortunately, I've had 2 customers since you've used that pump, and it's worked." This goes back and forth a few minutes, with Kevin getting more and more aggressive as he simply fails to grasp the fact that he didn't put enough fuel in his van to immediately register without letting it flow through the engine. "That's it! Get me your manager!" My mom gives him a serious look as she's currently wearing a badge that says manager in bold letters. When it doesn't seem that Kevin takes notice, she finally says, "I could get you my other manager." She's referring to another member of staff with similar duties as her, as the store always trains several managers at once due to the high turnaround. Good then." My mom disappeared for a few minutes and came back with her co-worker. Kevin had disappeared. Perhaps he had grown bored, or perhaps the several angry regulars that he had line cut had a word with him, but he drove off, proving he did in fact have fuel. This had not actually been the store's first run-in with Kevin, and he had been aggressive that time too. The customers asked if my mom was alright and took statements so my mom and her co-worker could take the evidence to HR. So that's the end? Ha, nope. About 30 minutes later, Kevin's wife comes into the store and goes to my mom's co-worker. "I want to make a complaint about your worker. She was rude to my husband and refused to help him get home and refused to get him the manager." So she was complaining that the manager didn't get the manager and help her husband drive home after her husband drove home? Due to what happened, Kevin and his wife were banned from the petrol station. Best part, it's the only petrol station for about 20 miles in any direction as we live in the middle of rural England. That was the last story, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Thank you, and I hope that you have a nice day.